Welcome back to Outside Views, and today we have to talk about a governing party that allegedly is in a state of controlled implosion less than 18 months after winning a historic mandate. And the reports from Westminster are not about policy or reform. They are about betrayal, incompetence, and plots to oust the Prime Minister. And my strong personal view is that this situation is a profound and deeply cynical tragedy, proving that a leader who is more focused on managing internal fractions than on holding true to a foundational vision will inevitably be consumed by the very chaos he tried to avoid. The Prime Minister is facing a plot that is no longer just being hatched in the shadows. It's being openly discussed by cabinet ministers and senior strategists, and the clock is ticking down to the moment of betrayal. The plot is fueled by a toxic mix of plunging poll ratings, devastating policy blunders, and the imminent catastrophic breaking of the party's core economic promise. But let's start with a catastrophic collapse in public confidence that provides the political oxygen for the plotters. The party's poll ratings have fallen to a level that is simply unprecedented for a majority government this early in its term. Latest polls from firms like More in Commons put the party at a shocking 18% support, dropping them into third place nationally. Think about that. A party that was swept into power is now polling behind the opposition and, even more damningly, behind the populist Reform UK party, which is surging with 31% backing. And the level of voter desertion, a full one-third of voters believing the Prime Minister and the Chancellor should resign, according to recent opinion data, signals not just dissatisfaction, but complete disillusionment. And this is not a swing of the pendulum. It's a structural collapse of the center ground that the Prime Minister desperately tried to occupy. The Prime Minister's personal approval rating is in the abyss, with a net satisfaction score that is reportedly the lowest recorded for any Prime Minister in history going back to the 1970s. And he's no longer seen as the answer to chaos. He's now perceived by many as the source of it, and his own supporters are losing faith. The political tinderbox, however, is being ignited by the imminent unavoidable betrayal of the party's most sacred election promise. The party explicitly and repeatedly pledged not to raise the headline rates of income tax, of national insurance, or VAT. And this promise was the bedrock of the appeal to center-ground voters, a guarantee of fiscal stability and reliability. And now, the reality of the massive 30 to 50 billion pound fiscal black hole, depending on the sources you look at, a directly consequence of years of poor economic management, the permanent drag of Brexit, and weak productivity growth, has made that promise impossible to keep. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is signaling that an income tax hike is coming in the budget to plug this massive hole, a decision that will cost the average worker hundreds of pounds a year. The moment that tax rise is announced, the Prime Minister will be branded a liar, a politician who achieved power under false pretenses. And the new Deputy Leader, Lucy Powell, has already provided the public justification for the revolt by warning the government against raising taxes, stating that doing so would irreparably damage trust in politics. And this is a calculated, devastating statement, offering a shield of moral high ground for any MP plotting a rebellion against the tax hike. It turns the debate from a matter of economic policy into one of political integrity, which the Prime Minister is clearly losing. The lack of integrity is compounded by a string of self-inflicted wounds and grotesque blunders that have paralyzed the government with scandal. The controversy over Peter Mandelson, appointed as the UK's ambassador to the US and then summarily sacked, raised fundamental questions about the Prime Minister's judgment. The sacking occurred only after new revelations emerged about Mandelson's relationship with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, including emails where Mandelson urged Epstein to fight for early release. And the Prime Minister and his office initially defended the appointment, but the leaked emails proved to be the game-changing information that forced the dismissal, leaving the Prime Minister looking either hopelessly naive or deliberately evasive about the risks. And then we have the ethics failure of the Culture Secretary, who was forced to apologize after a probe found she unknowingly breached governance rules by failing to declare donations from her chosen chair of a new football watchdog. Again, this is not an existential crisis, but it feeds the narrative that the government promised clean politics but is delivering the same tired cronyism. And most unforgivably, the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, was lambasted for his contemptuous handling of the mistaken release of a convicted sex offender from HMP Wandsworth. To be briefed on a serious security blunder, the mistaken release of an Algerian sex offender, and then to deliberately refuse to address it at Prime Minister's questions, is an act of political cowardice that signals a profound lack of respect for accountability and public safety. And these are not isolated incidents. They are evidence of a leadership that is leaden-footed, defensive, and incompetent in a crisis. The backbench dissent is now organized, having tested its strength on the battlefield of welfare reform. The government's plans to reform disability and welfare benefits, aimed at saving around £5 billion, caused the largest rebellion since the Prime Minister took power. Over 100 Labour MPs joined the rebels in threatening to block the welfare changes over fears they would harm people claiming disability benefits, with one internal assessment suggesting the cuts could push 250,000 people into poverty. The government was forced into a humiliating series of U-turns and concessions, pulling back the most controversial cuts to personal independent payment for existing claimants. And then, in a desperate attempt to restore unity, the Prime Minister restored the whip to four of the most outspoken rebel MPs who had been suspended for their opposition. And this move was an act of pure desperation. The Prime Minister had tried the stick of discipline and failed, and was now offering the carrot of unity, looking weak on principle and insecure in authority. The MPs who were first elected in the landslide are now openly questioning whether the Prime Minister is up to the job, with figures like Richard Bergen publicly warning that he is supping in the last chance saloon. The conversation is no longer if a challenge will happen, but who will lead it and when the timing will be best, with the next local elections in May widely viewed as the hard deadline for this removal. The Prime Minister promised a government of competence and integrity to fix the mistakes of the past, but he's now delivering a masterclass in political paralysis, driven by a deep lack of vision and a cowardly fiscal policy. The income tax rise is the final price of the broken promise, and the Prime Minister will be forced to pay it with his own career, making the next few months the most dangerous period of his premiership. The plot is inevitable because the faith is gone, and it's self-made. This promise should never have been made. Everybody who knows what Brexit did to that country knew that you cannot keep the debt taking in check while not raising taxes. It was as stupid promises as what made in Brexit, what was in that manifesto. Everybody knew this was impossible to keep. The tax rise is necessary. And I do say that too. It is necessary. But it will break his career. And if you want to see another video, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.